Gradually, without rushing, as knowledge spreads in society and as people respond to that knowledge adequately. And those who react inadequately, well, in general, life eliminates them when they exhaust God's allowance for the inadequacy of the reaction. Yes, these will be rather slow changes. It may culminate in a sharp transition, but this sharp transition happens in the same way as supercooled liquid. For a long time, some quality accumulates. When this quality has built up, you snap your fingers and all at once there is a crystal. Well, here too, everything can flow forward in such a way that slowly, the proportion of people who understand what and how and personally develop in a previous direction grows. Well then, when this part exceeds a certain critical level, then their will be simply decisive. I think that this need for confrontation will disappear as Russian civilization develops in the previous direction. Well, just look at reality. Where does weaponry come from? It must first be invented. Secondly, it must be created. What does it take to create not single samples, but a full production series? Well, and how long does it take to create a full-fledged army or navy fleet? About 20 years. Within these 20 years, using measures of enlightenment and education, if we work on these in earnest, we can achieve such results that there will be no need for the army and navy as such, at least in such a mass. Well then, we live in an era where technological change is happening quite quickly. So in relation to the military, what does that mean? This means that many types of weapons can become obsolete before they are deployed. This may correspond to reality, because even if we turn to archaeological data, then among the remains of people of the Stone Age, there are practically no remains with traces of military injuries. That is, people did not fight each other. And even, again, if we turn to archaeology, then palisades surrounded the settlements. You see, a palisade, that is a stockade of logs, this is not a fortification. This is not protection from people. This is protection against wild animals. But this is another story. However, when the fortress walls appear, this is protection from people. My understanding of the issue is that Iblis is not a fictional character, that Satan is indeed a reality, and he is also not indifferent to what is happening on earth. Yes, how and why they succumb, this is another matter. Each succumbs on his own if he succumbs. Well, the Soviet Union overall developed in the direction of social justice and previousness. This was proclaimed the goal of politics. If this were the actual, genuine meaning of life, well, maybe not for every Soviet person, but at least 10%, then the Soviet Union would exist now as the only superpower in the world. And there would be a queue for the right to join the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Well, in what sense is it a superpower? The leader of scientific and technological progress, the leader in a sense of economic development? That is how the Soviet Union could exist if there was a correct understanding that Soviet power, ideally, is the power of the people and not power for the people. And the majority of the population in our country treats the government dependently. They must ensure the quality of governance for us. We must do nothing. They must do everything. But the state, statehood, is always the same people to whom society itself gave birth and raised. It did not fall from the moon. All the swindlers, scoundrels and bastards that have ever been in history, they themselves were brought up by society. And society allowed them to power where they could accomplish their filth. But this is possible only in one single case. If alternatives are not brought up, that would stop the villains and bastards from occupying the posts in which they had been corrupted. And in general, the statement, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, is a slanderous one, because power does not corrupt anyone. Power makes it possible to manifest nravious defects, because the higher the hierarchy of power, the more subordinates and fewer bosses. And in the end, the subject who takes the reins is able to gain such a status when there are no intrasocial factors to deter it. Then his life is stopped by either an illness or an accident. When they say that this is impravious, unfair, all the same, in my opinion, this is pravious. In particular, the Quran places greater responsibility on those who submit to aspirants for domination than those who are eager to dominate. Well, in general, you need to understand that the culture is an information algorithmic system, that a child grows not only in nature, but he grows in a certain cultural environment, and the cultural environment affects him just like the natural one. And it is necessary to modify the culture so that sovest and shame are not squandered by parents, and that people enter into youth with a human type of psyche structure and continue to live under the dictatorship of sovest. But we live in a culture where the vast majority excluded shame and sovest from the algorithms of the personal psyche, and they in no way participate in the development of decisions about how to behave, what to do and how to do it. Well, then the sovestless society disintegrates as a result of its sovestlessness. Well, at a certain point, yes. This will be guaranteed because in nature there is such a thing as irreversibility. Now, if one reaches a certain level of understanding, then there is no turning back to a more primitive one. Yes, we have a chance to finally give rise to a civilization of humanness. But they themselves do nothing to ensure that the world is pravious. Because on the one hand, yes, there really is inertia inherited from the past. In order to give this inertia, to give psychodynamics a different orientation, you need to do something now. The question of what to do does not arise for most. For most, you have to live right now. To live is to make money somewhere and then to spend it in order to have something. Most people have the position that saving the homeland should only be for a fee and under the protection of special forces of the GRU or the KGB. Moreover, they prefer to save the motherland at banquets and parties than in true interaction and connection with life. Influence is possible because the achievement of the human type of psyche system is not reserved for certain people. The possibilities of matrix egregorial governance are open to everyone, and accordingly, influence is possible. When Pushkin wrote the Song of the Prophetic Oleg, well, he didn't come up with this story. It was real. And that magus that Oleg met influenced the course of events. There are commentaries on this in the Conception of Social Safety. This is an inconsistent statement, because there is a counter-question which the majority are not ready to answer. What have you done so that at least something depends on you? But many consider this question to be rude or offensive. Well, firstly, the term professional hierarchy is in itself incorrect. Because if we talk about the activities of people based on collective work, professional work, then in general you will not get anywhere from this. As in collective work, there is a kind of subordination. Someone gives direction, someone carries out that direction, and this, in general, is part of the technological process. Both require certain knowledge, but there will be no general result if someone is careless and does not possess the knowledge that is needed in order to get a certain result with high quality. Well, we have gone beyond the limits of enterprise. What comes next? Either people understand that that's it, official responsibilities are over, human relations have begun, or they start to build a personal hierarchy. These are simply different things. And in general, the issue is very much neglected because the political economic term division of labor is essentially incorrect. Because there is not a division of labor, but a specialization of labor that underlies the unification of labor. Public unification of professional labor. Let's say we do something on the basis of collective work and want to get a good result. Then everyone who does this should work dobrosovestly, increase professionalism, and contribute to the overall result that is achieved by collective work. This applies to everyone, whether they turn screws or wipe dust off machines, and to those who are at the head of state and govern those processes. Well, either in manual mode or by organizing some type of self-government. If the attitude to work is dobrosovestless, then the result will be naturally bad. Because if we talk about our beloved domestic automobile industry, the Fiat that started the Vaz was the best car of the year in Europe at the time. That is, they gave us the cream of the crop. But what have they made of this cream and why? Because they related to work sovestlessly. The work is collective. One has screwed up something. The other, on this filthy basis, cannot do well what depends on him. And the system as a whole was and is unable to put the scammer in place, regardless of what he does, whether he twists the nuts or he runs the ministry.
Хоть руководит министерством.